Welcome to the Unapologetic with Janine McKinnon podcast, helping you step more fully into your feminine, unapologetic authenticity. I'm your host, Janine McKinnon, confidence and sexual empowerment coach, who went from the trenches of 2 kids under 2 years old, feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, disconnected, and resentful, to creating a life I'm obsessed with, full of passion, presence, pleasure, and playfulness. I love myself, I love my marriage, I love my kids, and I love my life. And I want to help you feel the same level of love and fulfillment in your life. Here you can find inspiration and tools taken from my one-on-one coaching sessions and group experiences to support you in your journey. We'll cover things like societal conditioning, inner child healing, women's empowerment, and tantric and Taoist principles to inspire you to live a life you love while embodying your feminine, unapologetic authenticity. And in doing so, creating a ripple effect throughout your life, your family, and everyone you interact with. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful we're able to connect in this way, and I can't wait to dig into the contents of this episode with you. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to another Tuesday transmission episode inside the Unapologetic with Janine McKinnon podcast. And today's transmission is all about how your struggles become your strengths. Or as Chloe Morgan says in our upcoming Unapologetic Stories episode on Thursday, that our messages come from our messes. And so that is those things that are really messy and challenging and so fucking hard for us is where we really shine, is through overcoming those things that we really find our strength and that we're really able to create that impact, not only for ourselves, but for our families and for the others in our community through the way we show up in the world. And I've seen this in so many different ways. And this stems from a really powerful conversation I had with Chloe. And so please stay tuned on Thursday for that full episode and really hearing her share about her struggles and challenges and messiness and how she's really able to use that to really show up as her full authentic self and really shine her light through her music to lead the way for others as she aligns with her highest truth. And I see it in myself in how my emotions and my authenticity and being able to make choices for myself have always been a really hard fucking thing up until recent years. Like when it comes to showing up as my full self, I have my earliest memory, and I completely blocked out my early childhood up until 7. I don't remember any of it. And that might be like, okay, like now at 34, you don't remember that. But I remember being 10, 12 years old and not remembering anything before the age I was 7. So definitely some trauma there, and little bits and pieces have started to come out. But one of my earliest memories, and I don't know, I must have been like 9-ish, something like that. And this memory is around choice. And I don't know what the choice was, but I remember sitting at the dinner table at my mom's, and whatever the choices that were presented, I was just crying. I did not want to choose. It was so hard to choose what I wanted. And thank goodness for my mom, who was so supportive, and she put in so much work to get me to be able to choose. And I was able to go from that point of crying and not wanting to choose to picking out glasses. Because I had glasses from a very early age. I've since had laser eye surgery. But we'd be, okay, all the ones you like, put in a pile. Okay, now put one pair on, put the other pair on. Which do you like best? Okay, the one you don't, put aside. And just slowly, process of elimination, do that. We did that every time we shopped for something for myself. Again, like, thank goodness my mom had the patience to do this with me, because I know a lot of moms, especially, she was quite stressed out being a single mom post-divorce, but she made the space. And it really made an impact on me in being able to choose, because that was so hard. Now, another thing going back to, which is actually the earliest memory I was originally thinking about before this one popped in about choice, is I must have been right around 7-ish. And this is one of the first schools I went to after my parents got a divorce. We hopped around to 3 schools in 1 year when we first moved to Victoria. One school we were at for 3 days, and then it was at this second school. I remember being in some sort of after school program, and I was sitting on this like netted thing on the playground with one of the teachers, or whatever you might call them, from the after school care, and she was asking what I wanted to be my name for this pretend thing, this pretend game we were playing. And I remember just being so frozen up. It was, I think one of the first experiences I remember where I literally could not speak. It was so hard to speak. And eventually I could say, like, I don't want to share. I don't want to tell you what I want to be called. And I don't even know if I ever actually shared it or not, but what I wanted to be called was hippie girl. In the 90s, like, I loved all of the tie-dye and the yin and the yang, and then like smiley faces and like the bell bottoms and all of this stuff. Like, I was quite young. And the lava lamp, I had one in my room, and that was like hippie girl to me at that time. I definitely have a different concept for what that is now, but at that time, like, I just loved all of that stuff, and it was like this cool hippie stuff. And I had this big smiley face, peace sign, tie-dye poster in my room, and the lava lamp, and all of these things. Yet it was something I like held to me so closely, and I felt like I needed to hide. And now looking back, I know that I saw a bunch of people close to me at the time, through my family or friends of the family, different things like that, talk so negatively about hippies or about this and that. So I took on that programming that these things were wrong or bad, or we shouldn't be like this or that. And so I wouldn't let those parts of me be seen to other people, whether it was to people I didn't really know very well, like this particular after school care person, or around those parts of my family. And that is something that stacked on over and over again, really cementing in those neural pathways of hiding myself, of playing small, especially when it came to like the witchy side. Or my family comes from Romania, and it felt so accepting. In recent years, my dad was like, "Oh, you've always had a bit of gypsy in you." And that was so relieving. Because I felt like I had to hide that was wrong. And when I would be with people and they talk down about like this psychic booth that we would walk past, or those weird tarot cards, or this or that, all the other things, I created a story that those parts of me were wrong, that those parts of me wouldn't be accepted. And so I never let people see that. It was only in the last, I want to say 2-ish years, perhaps a little bit longer now, 2-3 years, where I slowly started letting people see those sides of me, like those true sides, not quieting it down. And so I spent decades of my life, over 30 years of my life, hiding these innate parts of me. Those were my struggles and my challenges, and making choices for what felt right for me, because I was so disconnected from that, because I would hide these parts of me. So I didn't have that connection. It was really hard for me to choose what was right for me, because I just couldn't connect with that. And then that plays into the emotional point. Is, again, being a child of divorce and an eldest daughter, I was like the strong one. My brother had a hard time through things, and I was always the easygoing one, the good girl, the one that like didn't have a tough time, that was okay with all of these different things. And that a big part of that came from just stuffing down my emotions, not letting them be seen, and doing what needed to be done. And I will say I am great in stressful situations or whenever shit hits the fan, it definitely has its advantages. I can just think so clearly and get done what needs to get done. And although it has its advantages, which I am very thankful for when it comes to my son smashing his head and bleeding all over the place and that I can handle that situation, it also came with its downsides in that I so disassociated from my emotions for such a long time. And it came to a point in my early teenage years that I could never fall asleep. I had the hardest time falling asleep, and then started to turn to weed. And I relied on that to fall asleep from the time I was very, very young, like I want to say 13. That would be how I would fall asleep. And then it would turn into alcohol and turn into other drugs. And I just felt so disconnected from who I was, didn't want to feel my emotions the way I would cope with big things. I remember when different people died in my life, whether they were closer friends at the time or family, I would go buy 2 bottles of wine and just drink it to myself for a night. And that's how I would cope. And then I would be okay after. Just further burying it down and not being willing to feel it. And so those are my messes. Those were my challenges. And through that, I've been able to find my strength. Through Tantra, through Taoism, like some core pieces of that are connecting with yourself, connecting with your energy body, connecting with your emotions. Really giving yourself the space to feel. And as you feel and alchemize your emotions, and as you look at your programming and dismantle it and take apart all of these pieces and really find who your authentic self is, and then finding the courage and the strength that really, as I now know, comes from that fully embodied sense of love, safety, and belonging from within. Once you have that, you're able to shine as your authentic self. It doesn't matter if people make some side comments about how this thing is stupid that you absolutely love. Like, that's totally okay. You love it. It's fine if they don't. It doesn't bother you. And you know what's right for you, so you are able to make choices in a way that feels good for you. Creating those boundaries, which just creates space for you to have more fun, more enjoyment, doing those things that really bring you into alignment. And so for me, I've seen how powerful this work is, how it's completely transformed these aspects of my life and has had this massive ripple effect for how I show up as a wife, a mom, and a multifaceted woman who gets to help other women in these areas. Because I think, especially as a woman growing up in this day and age and over these last few decades, we are taught to disassociate from ourselves, to stuff things down, to say yes to everybody except ourselves. And that's how we get to a point where we've gone to school, we've got the job, we've got the husband, the house, the kids, and you wake up and you look around and you're not happy and fulfilled like you thought you were supposed to be at that point. And that's because you did all of those things by being so separated from yourself. And that's why this work is so important, because it's how you come back home to yourself. And the way you are able to go through those different layers and really go into your challenges and your struggles and your mess, that's where you're going to find your strength. That's where you're going to find your messages to bring out into the world, to share with your family, to raise your kids so they can break those cycles and they don't repeat the same things that you did, that your parents did, and so on. That's where we really find not only our own strength, but build the strength of the collective. And that's why this work is so, so important. And so this message, like I said at the beginning, it comes from the full Unapologetic Stories episode with Chloe Morgan. I highly recommend checking it out. We dig into all of this and more, and that will be released on Thursday. So thank you so much for listening. I am here if you have any thoughts or you want to share with me what your messes are, what your struggles are. If you identified with any of this, I would love to chat and connect with you. You can shoot me a message on Instagram at janine.mckinnon or send me an email, info@janinemckinnon.com. I would love to chat. Until next time, take care. Thank you for joining us inside the Unapologetic with Janine McKinnon podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you feel called, I would so appreciate it if you shared about this episode in your stories or left us a review to help us reach more women in their unapologetic authenticity journey. Until next time, trust your inner wisdom and make some magic.